Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the political situation, the criticism being leveled on the government for their economic policies, the conditions, economic conditions at present, and also the joint opposition in the making as far as is there a joint opposition in the making with the PPP, their rally on Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's death, the kind of movement we are seeing between the PPP and the PMLN. Does it mean something more than what it seems like? Is it something for the future? Let's talk about that. We'll also be talking about the 18th Amendment and the politics being played on the 18th Amendment, whether the kind of reaction that is needed from the opposition at this point on such an important topic is very late in coming. We'll be talking about all of that. I have with me today Dr. Niaz Murtaza, who's a political analyst. Thank you for joining us today. Shafiq Ahmed, who is a senior journalist. Thank you for joining us. Niaz sir, let's start off with the kind of criticism. The government seems to be under pressure, does it not, with the kind of criticism that we are seeing leveled against it, not only politically but also economically. But we also have to keep in mind the fact that it's not, it hasn't been there for a very long time. So, the kind of latitude that we need to give it, considering the kind of dire straits it came in when it did come, it hasn't been that long. And the situation was what it was. What's your take on that?
Well, certainly, the numbers that you see today, increasing inflation, falling fiscal revenues, interest rates going up. You can't really say that, all these problems were created by the PTI government. Right. It's true that at the end of the PMLN government, the indicators were much, much rosier. But in some sense, they were artificially made rosier by going in for, a growth rate which wasn't really sustainable by, pumping in imports, some investments,
the last government.
Yeah, the last government, the PMLN government.
Right.
So clearly, and within the last government, not so much Mr. Miftah Ismail, but Mr. Ishaq Dar, so that very expansionary mode that he adopted did result in growth up to 5.86%. Right. But it was clearly not sustainable because you were not maintaining your fiscal deficit and your external deficits at the same time. And it was bound to happen that, so if he hadn't gone for such a high growth target, and say suppose he had
this
been
artificial sort of
and the basic thing was keeping the exchange rate very low, artificially low. If he had let the exchange rate devalue gradually over the years, the growth rate would not have been so high, but it would have been more sustainable. So clearly, a lot of blame really has to go for creating the problem. It has to go back to the PMLN and even some of the governments before that, going back to the Musharraf era, PPP, and so on. But then when you come to this government, I think the problem was it. You can't bring back the PMLN now and say, you have to fix it. You created the problem. The problem still has to be solved by the PTI government. And, it's now about 8 months. You can give 2 months, you can give 3 months. And the argument is that if the situation is so dire, you have to act quickly. You can't really say, okay, we were not, experienced and all, because you campaigned that you could have done so much.
But to be fair, the government went in and tried to get money from wherever it could. It went to the friendly countries.
Well, that was just firefighting. I think the kind of steps that should have taken was straight away go to, the IMF within the first 2 or 3 months, the way the PMLN and before that the PPP had done. That would have, arrested a lot of this decay, and it would have given some...
You think the delay in going to the IMF is responsible for a lot of...
for the fact that, the situation has still not been brought under control. Again, the problem was created largely by the PMLN, but, some of the steps that, the PTI could have taken earlier on were not taken. The two, mini budgets that it gave, not going to the IMF, not being able to find new ways of, revenues, tax revenues, export revenues. For some of that, clearly, the blame has to go to the PTI.
Shafiq Sahab, do you agree?
Yeah, I'm totally agree. Exactly what he said. I 100% agree.
But don't you think the mess was of such a huge magnitude that it requires, considerably more time for this government to actually bring things in control? I mean, they said it, and the Prime Minister said it. They don't have a magic wand that they could just wave and things would improve for us.
Actually,
because even Niaz Sahab is saying that things had been building from successive governments, going from bad to worse to where we are at this time.
That is true, and actually when PTI government came into being 7-8 months back, and the government had to face problems in different sectors. It was not only the economic problem.
Right.
International level, there was problem, like we had a problem with our eastern neighbor India. We had some problem with the US as well. And beside, there was the issue of Taliban. Afghanistan is also one of the big issue.
Right.
Terrorism was an issue. So economic issue is definitely on the top, because the people, the general people, they are feeling now a little bit heat now, because the wages of the people, or those who are salaried class, the salary add is, I mean, there's no movement, high movement in the salaries, but the prices of daily use item.
Inflation is something that's causing a lot of concern.
So this is the general public are now feeling that the government should have done something different, and they are feeling that I mean, a lot of things are expensive now. So overall, the impression is negative so far, and you cannot tell the ordinary people about the policies of the PMLN or the Pakistan People's Party policies, because the ordinary people, they are least interested to know the background, what happened exactly, and they have no idea about how much money we have taken from IMF.
You're saying that at this time, you know, the patience is wearing thin because they don't care about the cause. They just want the solution now.
Solution, of course. The people
Right.
want solution, and the overall people, like, they are living, majority of the Pakistanis, they are living on the threshold of the poverty line. So, I mean, a lot of poverty in the country, and they want a solution, like they want that their daily use items should, the prices should come down, it should be reduced. So this is the main issue, and I think that what Asad Umar said, that I mean, to stabilize the economy of the country, it will need further couple of years. So 2 years mean that for stability, like things will stable, the economic growth will be better. So it will take some time, and I agree with him, because but on the other hand, like the way they are increasing the energy prices, on the one hand we are talking about the increase in the export of Pakistani goods. So how you can export goods when the prices of electricity is high, like the oil prices are high, because the production, if somebody is a manufacturer or producing something, the cost will increase automatically. So you have a competition in the world. How you will compete with other countries like Indonesia, Vietnam, China, Malaysia? You cannot compete.
Right.
So your export will, I think, will be hurt with the increase of energy prices.
Right. We've also been joined by Senator Anwarul Haq Kakar Saab. Thank you for joining us, Senator Saab. We've been talking about the economy, we've been talking about the situation that the country is in at this present, and of course the government is feeling the heat of that. What's your opinion on that? Of course, you know, we've also been talking about the fact that at this time when the government did come in, it came in with a lot of baggage. The situation that it was, you know, it just had to face the kind of dire straits that we were in. So to change the situation, of course, it will take considerably more time.
Well, there is no doubt about that. I mean, it's without even saying it, that when you have such an economic mess, and primarily what you require is time to fix it and to
Right.
address it. The more important question which comes to my mind is that whether those measures which needs to be taken, are they being in that right direction or not? I mean, are we planning properly for the balance of payment? Are we focusing that what sort of an export policy we would be having? How would we increase our GDP? What would we produce? How would we invest in our human resource, which probably would translate into our GDP overall,
Right.
and few other things.
And how do you see these policies of this government? How do you see the way that they have taken up the challenge?
I feel they are trying to do whatever they can in the best of their ability, but the problem is it's a lot of political point scoring is there even over the economy, which I think so it should divorce itself from either from the government side or from the opposition side, because at the end of the day, if we suffer economically, all of us would suffer as a society and as a
Right.
state. So that realization needs to be exhibited by everyone. Instead of going into the public gatherings and talking about the poor economic performance of either this government or that government, we need to bring in all the hats together and try to do some brainstorming, primarily by the government, and I think so it could be supported by the positive engagement of the opposition too.
Right.
I feel they're trying to do, they still need some time.
But you think that there we are in the right direction, at least?
Yes, I think so. They're taking the initiatives. I mean, look at the Prime Minister's, wherever he goes, he's talking about tourism. I mean,
Right.
when you are talking about tourism, what you are trying to do, you're trying to import dollars. It's one way of directly importing dollars.
Right.
You know, it's a huge industry worldwide, globally. It's a $1 trillion plus industry in which Pakistan's chunk is very low. So if we try to give a direction to that, I think so we can immediately have some sort of a rescue. And there are other areas too. It's not just one tourism on which I'm talking about, but this is one of the directions which reflects their thinking, that they're trying to get rid of this economic mess in which we all are stuck.
Right, and we certainly hope that their efforts are rewarded in the near future. Of course, we will have to be patient. Nyasa, what about politically speaking? The government, of course, is not only facing challenges in the economic front, but also politically, considering the numbers in the National Assembly, and also, with this process of accountability. Do you think it's this process of accountability that seems to be fostering a relationship between the PPP and the PMLN?
Yeah, but just a few comments on the direction of the economy and so on. So in a sense, they have taken certain steps, and the biggest steps have been devaluing the rupee and increasing interest rates and on. So what has been the impact of that so far? So the current account was the main problem that brought all this trouble. So the good news is that the current account deficit has started going down, but you can reduce the current account deficit in two ways: either by increasing exports more than imports, or by imports going down, which is the bad way. The good way is exporting your way out of the problem. So right now, unfortunately, it's reducing, but it's reducing because not because exports are increasing substantially, but because since the economy is slowing down, the imports are reducing.
Right.
So even that will have some impact. Ultimately, I think after 6 months, what you will see is that the current account deficit will come under control. Even the exports will start increasing, investment will come in, and then the economy will start accelerating.
Right.
But then the question is, then the imports will also start increasing, and then will the increase in export be able to keep pace with the increase in imports or not? If not, then we'll be back into the same situation after 3 to 4 years. So what the crucial element has to be is, increase in tax revenues and increase in exports revenue beyond, what we've been having in the past.
Right.
And in that, you don't see too many ideas. So for example, FBR, you keep hearing sometimes, okay, we'll create a new FBR, sometimes it's about reform. So I think this is the areas where they have to focus on revenues of tax and revenues of export. I haven't seen too many good ideas on
And
that.
of course, reforms is something that is
Reform
on the
and
agenda at this
tourism
time.
will take a long time. It's not just about making visas easily available. You have to have the infrastructure, and then Pakistan has a more conservative culture than some of our neighboring countries, which have very liberal cultures, different cultures. So I think the main focus has to be on exports. That will be a big driver. Now, in terms of accountability, I still don't see any sign of any kind of political alliance between the PPP and PML. And I think they are going in their fairly separate directions. There is some coordination within the parliament, so both of them pulled out of this meeting on NAP. And so on, but I don't see any signs of an alliance to try to destabilize this government. Then with regard to accountability, as I have said before in your programs too, it has to be more even-handed. In fact, the great thing about PTI is that it has brought so much focus on accountability.
Right.
And I remember after the Panama thing, one thing that I really liked about their campaign was that accountability needs to start at the top with the Prime Minister and with the ruling party. But now, of course, the ruling party is PTI and the Prime Minister is Imran Khan. So the issue is that if we follow their own campaign, then the primary focus, or at least a much bigger focus of accountability, should now be on the PTI and the Prime Minister himself, because there are so many cases against PTI, even against Imran Khan,
But that doesn't
which
mean
have
that-
been languishing.
But that doesn't mean the opposition should be,
No,
we
not
should
let
them
loose,
go
but
and-
a much greater disproportionate focus because of this principle that accountability has to start at the
But what
top.
about
So we
the
need to see.
past? I mean, the government can't leave the past. If there is actually a
Of course,
corruption of
there was a
billions
past
and
even
billions
under
of
PMLN.
dollars, then that has to be
There was
accounted
a past
for.
even under PMLN, there was the PPP era, there was the Musharraf
You
era,
think they
but
should
they
let
still
it
said. No, I don't say that they should let us go, but a much bigger focus on PTI as well. Supreme Court took, suo motu notice on, the last Prime Minister, because we can't let these clouds hang over the Prime Minister. So, do the same with the current Prime Minister. There's so many cases against him as well.
Right. Let me go to Shafiq Saab. Shafiq Saab, do you agree?
No, I mean, let's look into the nature of the allegation against Imran Khan, the sitting Prime Minister, and the Pakistan People's Party leadership.
Right.
There's a lot of difference. Like, whenever the government or the NAB try to investigate something, they are always finding some new things. Like recently there was there was allegation of selling 2 plots, one was for the library in Sindh, in Karachi, the other was the money, the plot specifically given for the temple.
Right.
And both were sold to one Yunus Habib or Yunus Qudwai.
Right.
And he has returned that property now worth 600 million rupees. So the level is very high. Yes, there may be the nature of allegation between the cases against Imran Khan or Nawaz Sharif and Asif Ali Zardari is all different. And I think that the way the money have been the money spent by the previous or the PPP government in Sindh, it need to be investigated. In fact, there is not allegation against only Asif Ali Zardari, Faryal Talpur, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, and other the chief minister. The way they have spent the money without any traces and record. So it is a bigger crime.
And to be
So far it is
fair-
allegation, but it need to be investigated on the top.
And to be fair, these cases have been instituted a long time before the PTI, most of them. Isn't that true, Senators? These are not really cases.
It's apple and oranges. Even if you ask a blind person or a
Right.
deaf person or a person who's brought into this world few
Right.
months back, who doesn't have even the initial conceptualization, you just throw this question to them, he wouldn't compare Imran Khan with the rest of the leadership.
Right.
It's not even worth talking about.
Right.
Imran Khan has never been accused of plundering state institutions, state assets. On the other hand, here we go, we have a convict, a 2 times Prime Minister who's a convict by the court of law.
Right.
We have very serious allegations, which is, according to some legal experts, it would be very difficult to defend them in the court of law.
Right.
On the leadership of Pakistan People's Party. What do we have on Imran Khan? He has traveled in a helicopter along with the then Chief Minister, where you could have been accompanying that Chief Minister, I could have been accompanying that Chief Minister. That is not seriously plundering the state resources.
You're saying that there is great disparity between
Well,
both.
there is no comparison.
Right.
Disparity would be even to an extent when you have done something in a lower proportion. But there is no comparison. Imran Khan can have some 100 shortcomings.
But the point
But
that
the
Niaz Saab is
one
making
strength
is
which
that-
he has
Right.
is he's a financially disciplined individual. Nobody can accuse him of doing any wrongdoings on the financial account.
But the point that Niaz Saab is making is that now that the PTI is in the front seat, they're in the in the steering, they have the steering wheel of the country,
Yeah.
so to speak. They are more responsible.
Well, of course,
and
they
there
are
should be
responsible.
across the board accountability.
Well, of course
which
they are
is what he's
responsible,
saying.
but
Right.
Supreme Court is as vigilant as it was.
Right.
I don't think so. We are in a position to advise the Chief Justice or the rest of the lordships to go and have an extra vigilance on Imran Khan? I think so. They are representing their conscience, and if they feel so that the judiciary needs to intervene in the activities of the executive, they will. And if they feel that executive is performing their activities according to the constitution, they would let this 5 years of term go as it should.
Do you think that the way that the cases are being are proceeding, regardless of whether they are of the same kind or not, with people in the PTI, the people in the government, and against the people in the PTI and the government and the other political parties, the main opposition parties, is the same?
I think so, more or less same, because if it appears prima facie that there are more people who have been haunted by the NAB or the other authorities who belong to either PPP or PMLN, the simple reason is that they have been in the government for so long. PTI is in the government for last 7 months. So if you compare the tenure of all three parties, the share of the PTI still is more, because there are a couple of individuals who are associated with them, but they have been in past affiliated with different political parties and different political dispensation.
Right.
So there might be some interrogation of those tenures, which is fair enough. They should be done.
Right. Now, sir.
Yeah, I mean 2 points. First of all, there are some very fairly serious cases against Imran and the party. For example, the foreign funding case, and that's been dragging for forever. And they are making the same kind of excuses that the PPP and PMLN leaders do. Adjournments, changing lawyers, trying to get staying orders, and that case is very serious, and it's been going on for 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah.
Then the second thing is, for the Prime Minister, what we were told is that, it doesn't have to be something really big, even something small. Let's just remember that the last Prime Minister wasn't disqualified for anything big, but just for hiding this, minor asset, which I don't even recognize as an asset under cash accounting. So if you bring all of these cases together and put them under the microscope, the way, Nawaz Sharif's cases were put, it's quite possible that, you will find something small on the basis of which, even the existing Prime Minister can be taken. So, there is clearly this disparity. Then, if you look at the party, cases after cases are now appearing in the.
But why
against the
should
PTI.
we find anything? I mean, you're saying that if one were to look so
Because
introspectively.
that's the precedence you have. That
But
was done with Nawaz Sharif.
Even
Right.
if you
Just
look
one
at
second, let me just
okay.
finish.
Yeah,
So
sure,
that
sure,
was
sure.
done with Nawaz Sharif,
Right.
right? And then the other issue is the larger party itself. Now almost every day you heard something from KP. First of all, there was this case about the Go schools, the education enrollment, billions lost there. Then 2-3 days later there was something about Malam Jabba.
Right.
Then a couple of days ago there was this report about the BRT.
But
And
these are
today
not-
there was again something about a trust and educational trust of the KP government. So the cases are there, but you don't see so many people under
Right, but we don't see
In
them.
all
Ji.
these, the list of allegations which
Niaz
Honorable Niaz Sahab has mentioned, not a single penny has been accused on Mr. Imran Khan.
Right.
Well,
Not
the
a
party-
single
the-
penny.
The nature,
the
yes,
party.
of
So
course.
let
of course.
over
But there are
there,
accusations against Mr. Imran
over there, the leadership has been accused and they have been convicted that they have plundered the wealth of the taxpayers of Pakistan. If foreign funding case, even if you take that on the face of it,
Right.
it is not involved the taxpayer of Pakistani
It's
citizenship.
still a big case.
Well, if
with
of
all
course
the money
there
laundering
is a
and
big
the
case
foreign
which has not
funding.
been
I think the
which has
point he's
not been
making is that the
established.
cases are very different. The magnitude
The
is very
nature is different,
nature
the
is very
magnitude is different,
Which I think
but
we
it
can all
clearly
agree on.
reflects a wish list
Right.
on the part of my honorable colleague who wants to drag Mr. Imran Khan in some sort of a case.
No, I think
So-
right,
so the
but-
wishes,
but I think at
cannot
the same
be,
time, I mean, of course, we can acknowledge that there
respected.
is a difference as far as the magnitude, the nature of the cases is concerned, and
It's
like
very
you're
different.
saying, is in the face of the judiciary and NAB being independent, which is what the government has
Look, Maroq,
categorically said.
Ji,
Ji,
let me talk about one example. There is understanding between the court agreed, the Supreme Court agreed
Yes.
that Bahria Town owner or the chief
Right.
executive Malik Riaz is willing to pay 460 billion rupees in 7 years.
Right.
So look at the magnitude of the money. So and there was a troika, used the word by the judiciary one, troika of Zardari Group, Omni Group and Bahria Town. Okay, so we are omitting Bahria Town, but the Benami accounts case, I mean in one account there is allegation of transferring the money, 357 million rupees transferred from one account.
Right.
So in all the accounts, I mean, the way things are, there is a misappropriation, particularly in Sindh,
Right.
and there is strong allegation like the entire government is involved. Like, you know, just yesterday, I think the 9 official of the Karachi Metropolitan Corporation,
Right.
their name have been added because they allotted the land, and there are other embezzlement related to the property, selling of property, government property.
Right.
So it seems that the entire Sindh government was involved in this kind of, I mean, allegation of corruption and selling the
But
property on
Shafiq
throwaway
Sahib, that
rates.
also has to be proved.
Of course,
Of
that's
course, there are
allegation. We are using the
allegations.
word allegation because it's still allegation,
Yes.
and the court has to prove these all allegation. But the allegation, the level, I mean, it's very strong allegation. And as per JIT report, I mean, the way they have collected evidences against Asif Ali Zardari and the company, I mean, this time it seems to be a very strong case against Pakistan People's Party. That is why they are telling in the today's rally, they said that we have to go to Islamabad to topple the government.
That's what I wanted to talk about actually, that this power show, is it a power show in your opinion, Senator Sahib?
Well, it's
Which is perhaps,
it's a political
dictated
blackmailing.
by the accountability drive.
It's unfortunately a political blackmailing. I would have felt more happier that a very important opposition party which hails from the province of the Sindh, if they would have taken government on the economic mess in which we find all of us ourselves stuck in, that they are not taking on the government on the economic front, on foreign policy front, on other important related issues.
But the government has done quite well on the foreign policy front.
Well, of
I mean,
course,
a lot of
but they do have difference of opinion
But
as
you're
an
saying,
opposition.
right, you're saying that there are other credible, things to criticize
and
the government.
relevant and important issues. But unfortunately, they are threatening the government that they would be toppled because they've been haunted on the corruption allegations,
Right.
which discredits their movement, which discredits their initiative, and I do not see a public support behind such a call. Let's see what happens
Do you
to
think
it.
they'll get the support of the PMLN?
I doubt it personally. I doubt it. They are moving in different directions because each is stuck with its own skeleton, and
Right.
they are more interested in putting flesh in their own skeletons. So they have different objectives, they have different directions. At times you see convergence amongst them, and at times you see conflict amongst them.
But with the PMLN also, they're seeing a lot of heat as far as accountability is concerned. Of course, the former Prime Minister, 6 weeks will be up soon and the bail will also lapse. He may go back into jail, and considering, all the other factors with the political party facing a lot of their leaders in jail at this time.
Yeah.
So they
but
are
at the same time, there is a group of PMLN activists who are interpreting this 6 weeks
the former
respite as
Right.
as
as a
an
deal,
easy
you're saying.
way of handling PMLN's leadership, and this is unprecedented that a convict has been allowed to go on vacations.
But
It's more or less like a vacation.
Well,
Yes. Yes.
Having heard of, probably it would not be cited as a precedent in the any future.
But again, it's the courts and
Well,
looking at this circumstances.
Of course it is the courts, but
Right.
once the courts decide, as a citizen, you can have an opinion on those decisions.
Right.
As the people are having a decision,
But I'm just saying
opinion
that the government
on
doesn't have
Nawaz
anything to do
Sharif's
with-
convictions.
But I'm just saying that the government doesn't have anything to do with that decision. I mean,
No,
it's
government
a
of course
decision.
doesn't have
Right.
to do anything with that decision, but as a citizen of this country, I can have an opinion on the
You
decision
think
of
it's
the
a
courts.
you think it's a vacation?
Of course, it's a vacation and a very unique one, which has been offered to this one particular individual.
But he's unwell, and that's
Well, there are
Bharat-
thousands who are involved.
Kakar Sahab, let me interrupt you.
Right.
I mean, if you conduct medical test of all jail inmates above 50 years of age, they will definitely have some problem. Some people may have a gout, some people may have a high blood pressure, some people have a
Exactly.
sugar problem,
Maybe they're
and all of them
extenuating
go to the. I mean, this is unprecedented. What Kakar Sahab say, I agree. I mean, he is not inside the jail for honeymoon, by the way.
But he's not. But they're not all the former prime ministers of this country also. So
Which prime minister of any country who has been convicted and who has been given such a respite? I hardly see such a global precedent if
do you
somebody
think
can
it's
quote.
also because after what happened with his wife, considering the fact that there were a lot of theories about the fact, and I think that we've said this before, that she wasn't sick. A lot of people were saying she's not unwell, and this is all a hoax being played, and that the London hospital is also party to all of that. And after her the tragic
Demise,
death,
yeah.
we have been able to. I mean, maybe that is a factor that has played. That has been a
My
consideration.
prayers goes that she receives the best in the next world,
Right.
but that cannot be reason at all if somebody wants to even give it in the social conversation, what to talk of the legal arguments.
Right.
It has
No,
got
of course, it's not a legal
nothing to do.
consideration. But
Even in the social conversations, you cannot give such a reasons. I mean, all our prayers with late Begum Kulsoom.
Right.
We are all human beings. We do face such situations in our own personal lives,
Right.
but it has nothing to do with the life and death of any individual. It has to do with the financial discipline in which you have been an occupant and incumbent and a trustee on the behalf of 2,200 million people,
Right.
and you are being judged for those actions.
Right. Moving on, I want to talk about the 18th Amendment. Now we see a lot of politics being played on that. Instead of, do you think that we can see a clear stance coming out as far as the 18th Amendment is concerned, Niasab?
Yeah, but just 1 or 2 points on the last point. I mean,
I
I
can see
personally
everybody
also
wants to
find
talk
quite
about
odd that
Right.
a person who has been convicted, rightly or wrongly,
Right.
is being released. So it's a kind of an unusual relief, I agree.
Right.
But then if you look at the totality of the cases that have gone to him, I find much more unusual, precedences, legal processes, and if I total them all, I think still Nawaz Sharif has been at the receiving end rather than at the relief end. The initial disqualification,
Right.
lifetime disqualification, removal from the presidentship, they were all extremely unusual judgments. So I think we also need to look at that. Second point is, I don't think we can pick and choose between crimes. Of course, corruption affects our domestic coffers, but then foreign funding affects our standing with the world. So it has its own merits and demerits. So I think that needs to receive much more attention than it's receiving. Then the 18th Amendment, I think there's a lot of politics going on. There's very valid criticisms of the 18th Amendments, but the ones that I find valid are those which says that there hasn't been enough devolution. There are two kind of opposition to 18th Amendment. There are some saying too much devolution has been done and it needs to be rolled back,
Right.
and we need to have a stronger center, whereas there is the other one coming from the liberals which says that there hasn't been enough devolution, and whatever devolution has taken place hasn't been implemented
What
very
about
well.
the opposition's role? in
So,
all of this
I agree with the second view that
Right.
I think there are problems with implementation, but that doesn't mean that we should roll back that. And I think in that regard, the opposition has taken a good stand, especially People's Party, which had, authored the 18th Amendment. That there shouldn't be a rollback. Obviously, it has also got connected to their own cases, and it's quite possible.
But isn't the
that
PMLN also in essence saying the same thing?
in a sense, but they are not so loud. I mean, you have the same pattern that you have from 2018 to 2018, that the real opposition is not coming from the largest opposition party. Like the PPP was quiet under the PMLN, and now the PMLN is quiet under PTI, and it's gone to the second largest opposition party. So the real opposition right now, the vocal opposition, is coming from the People's Party, and a lot of that maybe have to do with the fact that they're facing all those cases, and whereas PMLN is finally now getting some relief. All that is true, but still the points that they are making about the 18th Amendment are valid. There should be further devolution and proper implementation rather than a rollback.
Ji, Shafiq Saab, do you agree?
Yes, I agree. I mean, I'm not in favor of change in the 18th
PPP is
Amendment.
also playing the Sindh card
But
again.
let me tell you one thing, one
Right.
problem. Like, government is asking a simple question: where the money has gone given to Sindh province under the NFC award, whether the money spent by the Pakistan People's Party government properly, judiciously, or where the money is going? They're asking this question.
Right.
And you know the answer, the People's Party, they don't have. So that is why they are creating more, more louder voices they have against 18th Amendment. I think 18th Amendment, it's a very good,
But
the
PPP is
provinces-
not against it.
People, there is some voices in the government, and
Right.
they are thinking changes in the 18th Amendment. So Kakar Saab can explain a little bit more about this. There is some voices, but government is not clearly talking on the 18th Amendment, whether they have a plan to change it or what kind of plan they have.
Right.
They want to do with the 18th Amendment. But there is one problem, like the money earmarked or given to the governments, the provincial governments, whether they have spent the money for the human development or some public development, where the money has gone. They want the traces, they want to know about the record, and this is the major issue, and that is why the government is talking about the changes, or maybe some kind of changes in the 18th Amendment.
Right. Senator Saab, do you think it's that, or do you think that there is
I
more to-
personally feel that first of all, it should not be treated as a dogma.
Right.
It's not gospel truth, it's not any divine revelation. We in this country, even the People's Party itself, who takes so much pride in 1973's constitution and its author and architect being ZAB,
Right.
has gone through 20 amendments or 21 amendments of the same constitution. So why 18th Amendment has become more sacred a document than the architect ZAB's document itself?
Why, in your opinion?
Well, the issue, I
The
think
politics of it?
I personally feel, this is my personal opinion, it's not my party position. I
Right.
do know that there are public positions on 18th Amendment, and
Right.
people do have private conversations on the same topic. What happened, that there was a deep cry of the small provinces. They wanted to remove the concurrent list, which
Right.
initially, when they were going through the 1973 constitution, the center kept it with itself, and they promised that within 10 years they're going to devolve all those subjects,
Right.
which did not
Didn't
happen,
happen, right.
unfortunately. We have gone through that history of our period, political history of our era, and then you come and you have this 18th Amendment, which did devolve a lot to the provinces. But in reality, what it did, that it took power from Islamabad and it created 4 new Islamabads.
Right.
It created Karachi, it created Lahore, it created Peshawar, it created Quetta. But Quetta is not Balochistan. Karachi is not Sindh. Lahore is not Punjab. And Peshawar is not Khyber Pakhtunkhwa.
Right.
So there is a horizontal requirement of all the 4 provinces. There is a rural Pakistan which comprises of 70 to 80% of our population.
Very true, very true.
And those finance bills and those financial powers and the fiscal powers, they remain centralized with the provincial capital,
Yes.
with the gift of the 18th Amendment. So can we talk about it, that can we improve it,
But
can
we
we
wanted
add
to
to it? Can
decentralize
we
the power. That
sub-
was the whole purpose of the amendment anyway.
But it did.
But you're saying it ignored.
Well, why did it wanted to devolve the power from the center to the province? Because they wanted to develop the province. But instead of developing the province, they have developed a central
Only a section
nucleus
of it, you're
within
saying.
within
and it's
the
ignored
province.
the other areas.
And the rest of the province is again being ignored.
Right.
So you need to transfer the power further at the local level, to tehsil level, to district level, a way of the local government,
And
which
how will that
needs
happen,
to be
you're
improved.
saying?
Well, even in the 18th Amendment, it did ask that there has to be a provincial finance commission, which no province has adopted, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yes.
And there are things which can be further added or omitted.
So you're saying there needs to be more amendment and fine tuning of the 18th
Fine
Amendment.
tuning of 18th Amendment, and there
Right.
needs to be that we should have a healthy debate about it, instead of taking a dogmatic position that if somebody assaults on 18th Amendment, it would be considered an assault on federation or blah blah blah. It will not help anyone.
Right.
It is a human experiment. We are evolving. If we see the impact, if it is negative impact, let's remove that negative energy. If it is a positive impact, let's strengthen it further.
And the government is open to that.
I would feel so. Yeah, I think so.
Akkad Sahab, I mean, the provincial must be given autonomy. There should be some check from the federal government. But the 18th amendment overall is a good amendment.
Exactly.
I mean,
Which is
No
what most
denying that.
everybody agrees
No
on.
denying
but it
Everybody
needs-
agrees,
But-
but you hear
yes.
voices,
Right.
you know.
But at the same time, what I'm trying to tell you here,
that it needs further.
it needs further tuning.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a final product. It's not a finished product that it carries all the panacea of the human problems.
Ji Nya sir.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Kakar Saab was asking what's so sacrosanct about. There's nothing sacrosanct about 18th Amendment, but there's a global consensus that devolution is good for governance.
And he's probably
And then
talking about
the second
further
point that
devolution.
he's making, that you know the powers have not gone down to the local level, I agree with. But to do that, you don't have to amend the 18th Amendment. Every province has to come up with their own local government laws, which give real power to the district, which hasn't happened. I think the best model was from KP, at least on paper.
Right.
But in practice, there were problems even with that. So now every province is, you know, coming up with new laws. Punjab has developed a draft. Sindh is thinking about it. Now that should be the focus. You know, 18th Amendment is fine, but you know, develop more devolution at the provincial level down to the districts.
Right. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Niaz Murtaza. Thank you for being with us today. Shafiq Ahmed Saab, thank you for joining us today. Senator Anwarul Kakar Saab, thank you for joining us today. As far as the country is concerned, as far as our economic situation, our political situation is concerned, as a country, we need to understand the situation we were in. We need to understand the kind of political, economic climate that this government came in. We need to give the government the kind of time it needs to fine-tune its policies, to bring the country to the kind of prosperity that they envisage, the kind of prosperity that they hope for this country. Let's hope that we can all do that. Let's hope that we can all see and make a better Pakistan. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.